So theme 8 is holding to account, guidelines and quality. How do we ensure quality monitoring and clinical guidelines are implemented across the NHS?
Yes, so there's a statutory requirement for NHS organisations to implement NICE guidance, particularly technology appraisals. And there's also guidance and a requirement for commissioners to fund fund drugs that are approved by NICE. It's so important that organisations prioritise clinical audit and the monitoring of clinical quality standards so that they know that they are compliant with national guidance that's been published by NICE. We've done a number of investigations where clinical guidance isn't followed, either that's been developed locally or it is the national guidance, and there's no real clinical rationale when we've looked objectively as to why the patient didn't get the care that was in effect dictated nationally. I think it's really important that boards maintain pressure on organisations to review and to keep their local guidance up to date in line with the national publications.
That makes sense. And then that would cover everybody for any issues that do come up.
Yes, and organisations can assure themselves that the care that they're delivering is in line with the national guidance.
Theme 9 is collect once and use often, data capture and the electronic record. And then theme 10 is collecting what matters, databases and registries. Both are around data. Could you elaborate on them?
Yeah, so there are some subtleties in the difference between the themes. So the first theme is around how do we collect information about patients and make it available at the point that it's needed. So I think it's fair to say that patients don't recognise organisational boundaries in the NHS, and it's not really appropriate that they need to. Their data should be shared securely, but be available seamlessly. And I think that needs to go deeper than the single care record or the spine, as it's sometimes referred to. The second theme number 10, which is about collecting what matters, focuses on databases and registries. And we've seen quite a few examples already over time where the efficiency of a medical device changes. So it's a hip replacement is a good example. There are several different types of hip joint that you can use, and some have different benefits. And then occasionally, at some point in the future, you will realise that the efficacy or the effectiveness of a particular device isn't as it was originally thought. And we have had occasions where there have been national recall programs where people have had to have specific joints replaced so that they don't cause any future harm. And that involves calling in lots of patients, going back through a manual trawls of health records if there aren't these databases and registries of who has been implanted with what.
Wow, that sounds time consuming to have to go back through all the records.
Yes. I mean, it makes sense that information is captured. In days gone by, there would be theatre books that are completed that sit in each theatre, and then once the book's full, someone goes and puts it in a box, and then suddenly if there's an issue with a particular device, then the books come out and people trawl through the pages to identify which patients have had which devices put in.
Theme 11 is time to change focus, regulation of medicines and devices and potential reforms. What are your thoughts on this?
So regulatory reform needs to be considered carefully. It definitely needs to be strengthened in terms of what's currently there, and we need to close some of the gaps that have been identified. But we need to avoid unintended consequences and need to recognise that if we're taking the decision to close an organisation and to set up a new organisation, that takes time and that costs money. So I would favour looking at the regulatory reform and looking to see where it can be strengthened and where gaps can be closed, not necessarily abolishing organisation and current organisations.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you've already got an organisation there that could be changed to encompass that and cover the gaps, then why not use it? Yeah, it takes a lot of energy, as you say, and resources to start anything up. Theme 12 is patient safety, doing it better. The report recommends the employment of a patient safety commissioner. How do you think this will work in practice?
So we need an organisation responsible for patient safety that spans, I think, wider than the NHS. I think it needs to span all public sector organisations and not be constrained by organisational boundaries. So what I mean by that is that it needs to include the NHS and all parts of it, but also local authorities, so we cover social, adult and children's care. And I think even looking into the police and possibly even fire provision, and there will be other public sector services that need to be encompassed in that Patient Safety Commissioner responsibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the report actually covered other areas like the DWP, so people getting hold of benefits and things, and also schooling for children to monitor how the effects of anything that happened to them were taken through into their education.
Absolutely, they're really good examples of how the responsibility of a Patient Safety Commissioner could be expanded.
So Darren, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, my final message is we've looked at the report. We think there's some really good stuff in it. It makes some really good points, and particularly across the 12 themes. But people should look at it, organisations should consider it in its widest sense, because the things that have been identified in this report, things that we absolutely have seen time and time again across the work that we do when we undertake investigations into incidents. So yeah, please read it and look at it and consider it in its widest sense. Finally, we need to remember that there are patients and families that have been involved in these tragic things that have happened and captured in this report, and our thoughts are with them.
Yeah, it's difficult reading, but I think it's really important for people to read it. Thank you, Darren, so much for joining me today and discussing this really important topic. And I think, as you say, the themes can be applied to everywhere within health and social care, and people should read the report. It's really important. You can follow Facia Melius on LinkedIn and Twitter, so I will leave the links in the description below. Thank you so much for listening to the Healthcare Huddle video podcast. Please like and subscribe, stay safe, and we will see you next time. I'm just jumping on here as we have split this video into 3 smaller segments for those of you who don't have a lot of time. I will add an iCard here with the next video. I will also leave the links in the description below along with the full-length video, which is around 18 minutes and 30. I hope you've enjoyed this smaller segment of the video and have learned a lot from it. As I say, follow us on social media and we will see you next time.